What's up, everyone? Are you trying to figure out which Mac computer is the best one for you? Are you doing research on YouTube and listening to all the big YouTubers and making you more confused than when you first started? Well, sit back and take some notes. I'm going to go through my simple 3-step process to pick out the best Mac for you.
Write that down.
If we haven't met before, my name is Terry and this is my lab. In this video, we're going to go through the 3-step process of finding the right Mac for you. If I don't cover it, it's really not that important in the decision. So, earlier this year, I released a couple of YouTube Reel, TikTok, Instagram, whatever you want to call those vertical videos, discussing just general advice for Apple device management. And let's say the comment sections blew up with which one do I buy. Then my wife and I sat down and started planning out our technology upgrades. And that's when I dove into M2 versus M3, 3 nanometer, all the variables that come into picking out a computer. And that's when I found the minefield that is the current state of M3 coverage on YouTube. There's so much nitpicking here that does not matter at all if you're buying a Mac. To make this decision easier, I'm going to go quickly review the high-level Apple value proposition, just so we have a good foundation on where to start with. Then I'm going to go through the 3-step process showing you how to properly gauge what you need from an Apple computer, and then I will close with using 2 examples of the process, one in my wife's current technology needs, and then one for myself showing how it can be used and expanded. It is no secret that Apple has built one of the best consumer ecosystems on the market today. The link between their hardware, software, and their services can't be beat by anything else on the consumer space. This is very similar to what Microsoft has done in the business side of the industry. Even though Microsoft and Google both have solid consumer offerings, it doesn't compete with the number of features and functionality that Apple can provide in their solutions. And this is coming from a guy that has 18 Microsoft certifications right now. All that to say, your experience is heavily dependent upon if you're going to use Apple services or not. So if you plan on buying a Mac and then actively avoid using any of Apple's services, then don't buy a Mac. Go to Costco, buy the cheapest Windows computer or a Chromebook. Otherwise, you're going to be severely disappointed on the outcome. Now, if you're already in the Apple ecosystem or you're ready to jump into it, then Apple will take care of you. All iPhones and iPads have 5 years of lifecycle support from the day they're released. All Mac computers have 7 years of lifecycle support from the day they're released. Your job in this whole setup here is to spec those devices correctly and then not break it. Or buy Apple Care with accidental damage. The choice is yours, but all you have to do is just buy it and then you are good for 5 years at least. It should be noted that sometimes with first generation products from Apple or major redesigns, that specific model may get a slightly shorter lifespan. Usually when that occurs, the lifespan is reduced by 2 years. So if you're on an iPhone or iPad, it goes from 5 years down to 3 years. And if you're on a Mac, it goes from 7 years down to 5. This is not a 100% guarantee. It's usually about a 50-50 split when you look at the product history on which ones get a shortened life cycle and which ones don't. But it is something to keep in mind when you're shopping and you see a new major redesign. Back to the life cycle discussion. Because of the overlap in support cycles, that guarantees a generally hassle-free experience with different services and applications floating between devices. 5 years of support is actually a very large feat to achieve in a solution like this, and is a longer time period than what most of us spend in high school. Don't worry, I'm in the majority for that right now, otherwise this video would be me advocating for Chromebooks. The dependability and longevity is the driver for Apple's value to its customers. Now let's dive into the 3-step process. Before you look at any Apple computers, any pricing, determine what your lifecycle goals for this computer are. Any computer that isn't thrown into a wood chipper will still turn on in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. That's not the problem. But if the computer itself isn't properly spec'd for your goals, at that point, will you actually want to use that computer?
I don't want it.
As I mentioned previously, Apple computers are supported for 7 years from release date. So if you order a brand new one and then spec it appropriately for the growth of your usage over that time, you can buy one computer and use it without problem for a solid 7 years. The industry average for computer life cycles is 3 to 5 years. 3 years is usually because it's the included hardware warranty on a lot of Windows computers. It's very easy to extend that warranty for 5 years. And basically how it kind of shakes down is the executives or the IT staff or the people that can actually take advantage of all the hardware, and it's a direct relation to their productivity. Their life cycles are usually closer to that 3-year mark, whereas the traditional office user or low needs, low usage person can get to that 5 mark without any problem. Now for the last piece of this, if you're looking to upgrade your computer every year, every 2 years, then either you have something driving that goal, whether it be just wanting the latest and greatest thing, whether it's a creative initiative where you need as much hardware as possible and as fast as possible, that this video is not for you because you have something else that's driving it. Or you are the most unlucky person ever and it keeps getting broken or stolen or both, which then I recommend you buy AppleCare. It is important to decide which route you're going to take, if you're going to do 3 to 5 years or 7 years, because Apple computers now with the M series processors, you have to pick everything up front. There is 0 user upgradable options after you purchase it. So if you want to go for 7 years, you're going to need more RAM in that. You won't be able to add RAM later. Once you pick what your initial goal is, don't worry. If something changes due to budget, you can always edit this step. But once you figure out what that life cycle is for you, you can move on to step 2 and find the system that is right for your needs.
As of this recording, all of the laptops and the iMac is M3. All the desktop computers are M2. This is due to there not being an ultra version of the M3 available. And Apple is trying to kind of reestablish that line in between general computing and heavy workstation computing, which actually makes this whole process a lot easier. It's more of a yes-no workflow. So let's just roll through it real quickly here. Do you want to be mobile? Yes or no? If your answer is yes, are you a general user or are you going to be a creative professional or scientific researcher? If you're just a general user, buy a MacBook Air. If you're creative, MacBook Pro. If you answered no to the mobile question, well, we still have the same second question. Are you a general user or a creative person? If you're a general user, that means you have an iMac or a base model Mac Mini as your starting point. So then the second question to that is, do you want the all-in-one with a rainbow of colors to choose from? Or do you want to pick and choose all of your accessories, and do you need 10 gig networking for some reason? If you're not creative, you probably don't need that one, but it is a technicality on this one here. If you want all-in-one, go with M3. If you want to pick everything or you have that high networking requirement, Mac Mini it is. If you're a creative professional, that leaves the Mac Studio and the Mac Pro. I'm going to just defer to you to gauge your workflows to see how far up the performance train you need to go. That's the basic breakdown on how you choose a Mac. Now I'll cover the detail between if you're on the fence of an M3 versus M3 Pro. This also applies to M2 and M2 Pro if you're on a Mac Mini decision. On the MacBook Pro purchase page, try to say that one fast, Apple has a nice breakdown of their use cases for M3, M3 Pro, and M3 Max. But because they wrote it in a positive tone, like everything is great, it's the lines between each one are still a little blurry. So I'm going to flip the tone of it and kind of write it in a negative way, not because it's a negative, but just to highlight why you would pick one over the other. M3 effortlessly edits 4K video really means only up to 4K, and I can vouch for this one personally. I tried editing and exporting a 5K clip from my GoPro Hero 10. So it's a 5K clip, but it's not a crazy, high quality 5K one compared to professional cameras. When I was editing it in Adobe Premiere Pro, editing it was a little bit bumpy, but it was acceptable given the pinch I was in, as long as I just lowered the preview quality as I went. The problem came is when I tried to export it. I hit export. The export time estimate rose up to 3 hours, and I canceled it and found a different option to get it done. M3 is basically tied to if you're going to, film stuff on your phone, whether it be pictures or videos, and then you want to clean them up a little bit before you put them on social media. Generally, if you're considering or already own camera equipment that's going to cost equal to or more than this computer purchase, then that's when you should just kind of default to the M3 Pro. Beyond the M3 and the M3 Pro, look at your workflows to see if an M3 Max is even relatively needed or not. The M3 Max is geared for those high-end animations, high-end scientific research. Are you going to be creating photorealistic animations at 8K or photorealistic visual effects on an 8K footage? Yes or no? For most of us, that answer is probably no, so you can skip it. But just in case you are on the team to make the visual effects for the next Marvel movie, there's your starting point. We have our life cycle and our preferred computer model picked. We need to combine the two and gauge if we need to do any upgrades to them. First and foremost, hard drive space is hard drive space. It's all integrated into the computer here. So those upgrades are a little expensive, but they're the same across the board. If you need 1 terabyte of space, you're going to need it on an Air. You're going to need it on a Pro, Max, doesn't matter. So upgrade that one as needed as you go through. Now, with that being said, if we're on a 3-year life cycle, you can generally stick to those pre-made options from Apple. Those are their standard of options for their models, and they're available on apple.com, Best Buy, Costco, wherever you want to buy it, they're available. To build off of that, let's just say you're a general user and you want to have a 3-year life cycle because you like new technology relatively quickly. Since you don't have anything intensive, you could go with one of the base model MacBook Airs and then just trade in every 3 years, and you have your current system that gets, generational upgrades as you go. If you're looking to keep that MacBook Air for like up to 5 years, I would bump up the RAM to 16 gigs. And if you want to go for the full product life cycle, go to 24 gigs. I know that sounds extreme, but in life, there's only 2 guarantees, death and taxes. But when it comes to technology, the third is your RAM usage will go up. There is not a solution on the market right now that uses less RAM today than it did 7 years ago. So the difference in you wanting to actually use this computer 7 years from now will be the RAM. With that being said, I'm going to throw out a couple words that might contradict that a little bit, but hopefully not too much. If you're staring down these pricing sheets and you notice that a fully maxed out MacBook Air is pretty close to the same cost as an entry-level MacBook Pro, you would be correct. You are going to get a heavier unit, but with more features. Obviously, if your budget allows it, you can now go up to the higher unit. Again, if you're one of those general users that aren't pushing the hardware limits of it, I don't see the need to upgrade a M3 Pro to 36 gigs of RAM. And as I kind of already said previously, if you're seriously considering a Max because of your workload speeds, that one you're going to have to touch into your software vendors, look at what you're actually doing to get more insight on what loadout will be the correct one. Now let's review your current build and your life cycle and then do the math for it. So if everything at a high level looks right, you can just move on to step 3. But if you need more comparable data between models and how is it going to work out, basically what you use is take your total computer cost, and then if it's an M3 product, divide that by 7. If it's an M2 product, divide that by 5. That will give you your yearly cost of ownership. This yearly cost of ownership can be used to evaluate this computer against each other and other options from other vendors if needed, but more on this in a moment. First, I just want to ask, if you're enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. I generally cover building stuff on a computer or around the house and or reviewing the tools required to do so. With that being said, links to all the common Apple products I'm talking about will be available below, along with links to all the equipment that I use either on a daily basis or to make these videos. These links are affiliate links. I may make a commission off of it. It doesn't impact the out the door price or anything with Prime days. But any commissions I do earn off of you using those links goes directly back into this channel to make it better for you. At this point, you have your life cycle goal, your ideal computer picked out and configured, and your yearly cost. Now you get to have a little internal conversation with yourself, maybe with your spouse, depending upon how you do the financial planning, and just double check, can I actually afford this new plan? It's prudent to double check numbers, especially if things change. In this case here, if you're going with the guise of, I want to build a computer that will last me 7 years, and you start with a base model MacBook Air, well, when you throw in the RAM and if you need a hard drive upgrade, that can easily hit $2,000 and double that initial number you saw on the screen. So it is perfectly okay and acceptable at this point to take a step back. And truth be told, like when we get to the example section later, it's exactly what I did when I started laying out all the pros and cons of all of the systems and for what I do. I'll get into all the details about that at the end here. If you build out your computer and you want it to last for 7 years, and then that price tag is, $2,200 or something like that, and you can't really swing that right now, doing 2-3 year life cycles on a smaller unit over that same amount of time, you'll probably spend about the same when you factor in Apple trade-ins. It's pros and cons on both ways, and just a different way of thinking about it. So you can play the long game and spend all the money up front, or proactively decide not to play the long game, spend less money, but then upgrade more frequently. It's up to you based off of where you are in life, where you are financially, how you want to tackle that next step. Before we move on to step 3, let's just clear up some of the bad advice that's floating out there right now to make this decision a little bit easier. First and foremost, buy the previous gen MacBook Air because you'll never see the difference. This argument is silly if you're looking to try and maximize how long you're going to own this device. Yes, the M2 MacBook Air is $100 cheaper than the M3, starting with their base model. The upgrades are the same, so it's all a wash if we're using this interchangeably here. But when you go through the life cycle process, you'll find out that saving that $100 up front, you lose 2 years of life cycle support, and will actually cost you $50-ish, slightly less, but about $50 per year to own and operate it. So if you're looking to try and get 7 years out of the device and have the life cycle support and have something left to trade in afterwards to get a trade-in discount towards the new one, there's zero reason to buy the M2 MacBook Air. The only reason I can think of to ever actually buy that discounted model is a business use case. My last pet peeve on this one with the bad information that's floating out there is benchmarks. Some groups seem to be really drilling down on the fact that with the benchmarks for M3 Pro versus M2 Pro, there's a couple of tests that are visually based that perform marginally better than the M3 Pro. So it's one of those, in the video, they're feigning disappointment that the M3 doesn't perform better. I look at those ones and see it's such a margin difference. There's plenty of other plausible explanations out there, like software optimization for the testing, the fact that the M2 series had more physical cores on their devices. So just one of those things, because it's more, it's going to perform better. And to be honest, when you look at it the other way with that specific case, M3 having less GPU cores and perform almost identically, that's actually a testament of the improvement of the 3nm platform. And then also because 3nm is new, there could be optimizations from Apple that didn't come down at the time that they were benchmarked. Either way, all of that to say is there's a set of 4 tests here: single core, multi-core, and then 2 video card related ones. M3 1.2, M2 1.2, it's a wash. Also, when you put it together there, the Pro is the middle option. It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's the middle. So it's not the entry-level model. The Pro is the middle, and then you have Max and Ultra on top. All of these benchmarks show, compared to last year, the middle product is still the middle product. It's a good value if you need it, overkill if you don't, and absolutely no reason at this point to try and hunt for old M2 stock versus just buying the M3.
Step 3, calendar and buy it. So after you've determined your life cycle and which model you're going to buy, you need to go on Google and literally type in Apple product name or Apple MacBook Pro release history. This will bring you to Wikipedia that has a nice little graph that shows when each model has been renewed and refreshed. Take that graph, look at today's calendar, see if there's going to be a new one that comes out in a couple of months. Obviously, depending upon your situation, you may or may not be able to avoid purchasing it at that time. But with this information, you can do one of two things. Obviously, if you can wait, it's better to wait, because then you get the newer one, you start your life cycle on day one and get literally 100% of that 7-year life cycle. Or option two, if it's a more pressing matter, like you need a computer to be able to work, that type of a thing, then at least you know that it's coming. So you're not surprised in 2 months and you're angered saying, oh, I just bought this thing and then they replaced it. Or if you're originally going to do a long play, like a 7-year investment, maybe you shift your life cycle down to the 3-year mark, buy a cheaper system at this time, and then trade it in at 3 years once you outgrow the limits of a base system. Either way, the more information you have at this point, the less likely there'll be any surprises and disappointment within the first year of ownership. To buy the Mac is pretty straightforward. If you're buying one of the standard models that you don't need to modify the RAM or hard drive space in, you can go to any electronics retailer as an Apple authorized reseller and just buy it. So this includes Amazon, Best Buy, Costco, Sam's Club. The only thing that really stands out in this one is obviously sometimes with Prime Days and stuff like that, Amazon has sales on these devices. Otherwise, if you buy it from Costco, there is a slight discount that runs all the time on Apple products. And this purchase will go towards your yearly spend rebate check. So since computers are generally multiple $1,000 purchases, then you can kind of bump that rebate up. Now, if you need to customize this Mac, you have to go through Apple. So, and also, even if you don't need to customize it, going through Apple does provide a couple other options as well. So if you're going to use the Apple credit card to buy it, you get 3% cash back and an option to do 0% financing for 12 months on the Mac, which, if you're scaling this up to be a 7-year purchase, isn't a bad option to have. Otherwise, the last detail of this is educational savings. So if you are a new or current college student, you're a parent of a new or current college student, or you are educational faculty, you can use the educational program through Apple, which does give you a discount on all their devices. During back to school time, they do have a gift card part that rides with it, so you get a little cash back bonus in the form of a gift card there. And also, you can couple that purchase with the Apple card to get the cash back and the financing options if you need it. So right there, you got a trifecta, quadfecta. I'm not sure how many fectas there are there, but you can definitely capitalize if you are a student when purchasing Apple products. Now let's head back to the computer and work through the real life examples of how you go through this process.
My wife and I just bought a new MacBook Air for her. And, going back to 8th grade, Mac versus PC has been our internal debate over these years. And now I am making a video on showing you how to buy the right Mac. So, but for her use case, one, she wanted lightweight, she wanted it portable, she wanted to travel with it. The most creative things that she does, or most intensive things that she does, is organizing and cleaning up photos, mostly family photos from, our family outings of our just newly growing family with kids and cousins and etc. like that. So lightweight photo editing for photo organizing is the highest part of this. Otherwise, it's the standard stuff. It's paying bills, it's shopping online, it's social media. So very simple use case. With that being said, we both wanted to, get the most out of this computer, so we're not buying computers while juggling, kids' sports costs and all that stuff, especially for use cases that are so entry level like that. Sorry. She loved the Starlight color MacBook Air, so we started with that one. We maximize the RAM, and with the MacBook Air, if you max out the RAM, you automatically get bumped up to the higher CPU, GPU count. And then we also upgraded the hard drive to 1 terabyte, basically to just provide flexible space as you're doing the organizing. It's only been about a month or so that she's owned that Mac, but so far she loves it. It's lightweight. It does more than anything she could have possibly dreamed, and the battery life on it is tremendous, especially compared to the old one. She loves it, And happy wife, happy life. Now for me and what I'm going to do in my spot. With YouTube actually being such a big part of my life now, the channel's monetized, looking at ways to grow it, and that I've worked from home remotely as Microsoft 365 admin in my current day job role, every work day guaranteed I spend between 8 and 10 hours a day in my home office, basically kind of tucked in the corner. And then I'm trying to figure out when to work in YouTube on top of that in the same spot, because my desktop's the only place that I have that I can crank out these creative videos with, easily with Adobe Premiere. So my initial thoughts was to do the long play on a MacBook and have it for 7 years, similar to what we did for my wife. But then I really started thinking about, because I've been looking at the other purchases I've made for this channel, and buying hardware when my wife was pregnant and money was a little bit tighter, just future planning, or earlier on when I had like 2 subscribers, is this channel actually going to pan out or whatnot? I bought a lot of stuff on that fear of either what if it doesn't work, or I can use it in multiple spots that I'm now replacing because it wasn't the right thing for this channel overall. So with that being said, I did take a hard look at my purchase. Like, I'm looking to purchase this Mac to move all my day-to-day stuff off of my desktop so I can actually work, with my family somewhere else or in a different room, and simplify that workflow. That's when I realized that for this industry, for me in the creative side, 4K has been out for almost a decade, or at least easily available out for almost a decade at this point. Like, we're kind of due for whatever the next iteration is. Is it 8K like Apple is using in their metrics, or is it something lower like 5K or 6K that's used with the GoPros and the Instacams and stuff like that? So at this point, like, yes, I want to optimize my workflow and become more mobile, but I don't want to double down on a 7-year purchase when the main thing that can make or break hardware is due to change in the middle of it. I have determined that I'm going to go and get the higher pre-built M3 Pro MacBook Pro build here, so because I need 1 terabyte of space at least. These video files, as I'm editing them, like right now, hitting 200 gigs of space for the underlying files is pretty common for my build. So that's 20% of the hard drive right there. Nonetheless, program files, updates, other working stuff. Like, if I did it on a 512 hard drive after formatting, that would be a very tight hard drive space situation. So that's how I've landed on that one. Is it comes with the 1 terabyte hard drive, so I can get the fast shipping when I pull the trigger on it. CPU and memory wise is more than enough to cover for the next 3 to 4 years on 4K content. Thank you all for watching. Let's bring this video to a close. We've been talking a lot about how to buy Apple products, so let's just do a quick recap and get you on your way. First, we talked about Apple and their value proposition when buying one of their computers and how it integrates with their ecosystem. After that, we reviewed traditional computer life cycles to gauge when you would like to upgrade your next computer and how that all relates to how much money you spend up front. Then we went through the process of picking out the right model Apple computer for you and upgrading it to match your chosen life cycle. Then we took a nice little detour into bad YouTube information from some of my bigger channels out there, and not my channels, my competitors, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but either way, we talked about some of the bad advice out there. I nullified it and gave recommendations. And then we followed up with how to track the Apple release cycle so you don't end up purchasing a brand new computer right before they release the new version of it. And then we tied it all together with going over the thought process and following this procedure for my wife's new computer and my future new computer as well. Again, my name is Terry, and this is my lab. If you really like this video, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing. Links to everything I mentioned and all the products that I use are down below. Those are the best ways to support this channel. And until next time, keep building.